Hello and welcome to Accurate Data Vibes. I am Petr Mahdalicek, founder and CEO of data solution companies that assist businesses with their data-related challenges. It's been my privilege to converse with data experts, and I am thrilled to have you join us today. Together, we'll delve into crucial data topics and we'll navigate the maze of data issues to come up with guidance for you. So, let's get started on this exciting journey of data discovery.
Are you feeling overwhelmed when your boss asks you to fix data? Today, I invited a special guest, a very good friend of mine, Dr. Thorsten Priebe, who teaches data intelligence and lead research at St. Pölten University of Applied Science. We will discuss how data governance can help you get data in your organization under control, how to set it up, where to start, and more importantly, what common mistakes you should avoid. Hello, Thorsten. How are you doing today?
Hello, Peter. I'm doing well, thank you. All good, all great here in St. Pölten, and looking forward to the session.
I always enjoy our discussions because you bring a quite a rare combination of experience from the theoretical world of numerous universities and from almost 2 decades of delivering customer projects across industries and continents. So can you please tell us a little bit about your background and your experience from data governance and data management projects?
Yes, sure. Well, basically, I've been in various positions in consulting type of companies over the past 15 years, I guess, and mostly in the banking industry. I was involved in data management, data warehouse, data governance kind of projects. So there's some, of course, experience from those that we can talk about. And now, of course, as you mentioned, at the university, on the one hand, I'm teaching topics like data management and data governance here in our data science bachelor and master programs. But on the other hand, I'm also, as you mentioned, involved in some research projects, which are, I guess, quite interesting in this context. One, for example, is dealing with how to do distributed data mesh setup, sometimes also called data spaces and this kind of thing. And others are about using data and analytics in areas like renewable energy communities or in agriculture. So very different from banking. So yeah, I hope I can share some experiences from those as well.
Thank you for completing the picture. Actually, today I would like to lead a discussion that will help people who are just about to start their data governance processes or their career in data governance. And why I invited you here today is to share this experience from big projects and how it actually could be implemented in, let's say, less mature environments than banking or financial world. In this moment, actually, I also like to invite all listeners to be part of our conversation and ask questions using the chat. We will pick the most relevant and do our best to answer them. These days, more than ever, companies are struggling to proceed with tasks related to reporting, monetization, compliance, merger and acquisitions. Basically, everything is touching data and is connected to data. The amount and the complexity of data is increasing exponentially, and there are also new demands on exchanging data between companies, systems, and so on. And to keep all of this under control, businesses need to implement data governance. And could you please explain a bit about what is it and where to start, or what is actually maybe where it's coming from, and when people should start thinking of implementing data governance? So basically the real basics about this data governance topic.
Of course, of course. Well, first of all, who should think about data governance? I think in the end, everybody should, in some way, start to think about data governance, because, as you mentioned, it touches basically many areas, and one of the drivers, of course, is also what's sometimes referred to as data democratization. What that means is actually the fact that in the past, maybe data was kind of an IT thing. If you wanted some analytics on the data, you need to submit a request to the IT department, and those were kind of the kings of the data. But this is definitely changing, and organizations want basically everyone to be able to use data and to access data. And in order to do that, they need to be able to understand the data. And in order to achieve that, you need some kind of data governance. The roots, I guess, at least in many organizations, at least in those where I was present in the projects in banking, of course, were of course regulatory in nature, because maybe banks in that regard were lucky that they were forced by regulators to implement some kind of a data governance. In the audience, some people may be aware of regulations like BCBS 239 from the Basel Committee. But point number one is this is no longer just about banks. There's regulations like GDPR, but also the EU Data Act, Data Governance Act, which in the end affect everyone. But of course, regulatory needs may not be very popular to address. But in the end, you will see that if you take some data governance measures, that it helps in many other regards. Some examples, of course, besides enabling access to data, is also increasing the trust in data. I very often heard the term, especially in some legacy data warehouses that were built, like there's only junk in the data warehouse. I don't believe the data in the data warehouse is garbage in there. In the end, of course, I mean, data warehouse is just a data store, right? It stores garbage in, garbage out, so it stores the data that you have. And if that data is garbage, okay, but it's not the fault of the data warehouse usually, right? And that's also what data governance achieves, that it makes this transparent, and it shows you what data quality issues exist and why they exist and how maybe to address them. Another example is time to market, which for reporting or other data related activities that can be improved. We had a client that after implementing a data governance setup, they were much better in estimating the effort for additional reporting needs. So it's not just the time to market itself, but also the better planning of it, and having better view on how much effort and how much time it will take. And in the end, of course, also reducing costs and etc. But let's look at what is actually data governance. And the problem with the term is that it's not very well defined, depending on who you talk to. For example, the Data Management Association, DAMA, they have a rather narrow view on the term data governance itself and a rather broad view on the term data management. Kind of obvious, they call themselves Data Management Association, while others for others it would be vice versa. In general, what you can say is there's always this kind of strategic part of it, which is about defining policies, defining rules, guidelines, roles and responsibilities, those kind of things, an organizational setup, which would be data governance also in the DAMA sense. While there's also the more operational topics, the hands-on things that you do, which is about data quality management, about describing the data, metadata management, those kind of things. And actually Gartner, for example, I guess to avoid this question, is it data management, is it data governance, they even coined their own term for that, which is like data or information stewardship. But basically, point is, despite the terminology, in the end, it's about two things. It's about strategic way of addressing it, defining roles, responsibilities, setting up the organization and the processes for it, and then it's about hands-on work that those people then need to do to improve your view on the data.
So thank you for that. So basically you are saying that data governance is about to bring transparency into the company, to bring understanding where data are stored if we need them, and let's say bringing also some responsibilities, who should decide if the data is right or not, and of course set up data quality rules which will then determine that the data is correct and or is incorrect. And so if this sounds, as you said, like something which must be implemented in every company that have, let's say, more than 2 people, because always then you have more than 2 views on how data should be used. And of course, it's something maybe very important that you said, is that it's not an IT topic, it's more a business topic, because IT can help a lot with setting up data pipelines and implement the data quality rules and doing lots of amazing stuff. But business is actually the one who should say how the data should look like, and what they should say, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll get to that anyway when we discuss more the pitfalls, and definitely involving business is one of the most important ones. Maybe a few more words on the roles, which you touched partly now, like what kind of setup you need to define. Maybe one thing also to keep in mind is not necessarily about hiring a new team and setting up a new team of new people. It's not necessarily new tasks that you're talking about. It's tasks that are already somehow being done, but in a very inefficient way. For example, if you look at checking data quality, everybody who does some kind of analytics somehow has to deal with the quality of the data. But if that happens in an uncoordinated way, it happens multiple times and maybe in not a consistent way. And basically, data governance is about clearly defining who does what. Usually, you have like 2 roles there. One is the data owner role, which is more on the data creation side. Like more usually, it's kind of a department head or management level who is responsible for the department or area that actually creates the data, which and can actually influence that data is being corrected. And on the other hand, you have usually something like a data steward or some data stewards. These are more the hands-on people who actually do the checking of the data and the describing and those more operational tasks. And the point is, they're not necessarily only on the data creation side. Of course, they are also very much on the data consumption side, because if you do reporting and analytics, you have different requirements for the data. Very nice example is always when you go to the grocery store and you're being asked for your zip code. From a data creation perspective, that in that very moment for that transaction is completely irrelevant where you come from. But for the analytics, if you want to analyze where your customers come from, you want to do statistics, things like that is of course very important. So to bring these 2 views into it. But yes, in any case, of course, involving business is very important. I agree.
I see. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about where in the organization hierarchy data governance should land? So it's if you look at the org chart, so where these people should belong to?
Well, of course, this very much depends on the organization. The organizational setup also depends on the maturity. There's when you start, very often you basically define roles and you just basically decentralized in the departments. Have maybe you define data owners who anyway sit in the departments who create the data, and you maybe have some data stewards here, some data stewards there, and you just try to kind of link it through some committee structure or basically some loose coupling, basically. If you get more mature, you may actually end up having some data steward kind of roles in a centralized team, because you can gain some synergies there if these people work together. And of course, if you're in the end, most of the audience most likely has heard about chief data officer and those kind of roles. If you're mature enough, you may actually end up even linking that to the board level and saying, hey, I have on board level someone who is responsible for the topic of data management and data governance. But it very much depends on where you are in your data governance journey. And I think it's also important it's a journey, and you cannot just flip the switch and say from now on we will restructure everything. And I think it makes sense to evolve also the organization together with the maturity in terms of data.
I see. Actually, I wanted to mention that we actually published an introductory white paper to data governance this week called Data Governance Essentials, Importance, Approach, and Roles. It's a free download at accurity.ai/data/governance. So feel free to download it. And going back to you, Thorsten, if we are introducing new processes and meaning we are introducing new demands on budget. So this is usually something which is not very popular if we don't introduce immediate impact on revenue in the same time. So how to motivate basically how to make the buy-in and to motivate the people, the important stakeholders to support data governance within the organization.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think there is the silver bullet like how to solve that. But what I can say is definitely from my experience, do not underestimate that topic, and spend the time in explaining to your stakeholders what data governance is and what it's good for. We had projects where we spent like first few months even on just mobilization, just basically going through the departments, explaining what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. So those benefits that I shortly touched, and there's something in it for everyone. There's some IT benefits, maybe the reduction of costs and reduction of time to market effort. That's something that also is valuable for IT. There is benefits for business, the higher trust in the data, the higher quality in the results, harmonization of data understanding, those kind of things. So depending on your audience, take the time to explain it over and over again. I mean, just one tip, maybe what helped for us is use analogies, because of course people you talk to in business departments, they're not data experts, and if you tell them you need a business glossary or a data catalog, they will look at you and not understand what you're talking about. But if you tell them, well, you need a kind of a travel guide that guides you through the data and shows you where to find which data, they may be better in understanding it, right? Or if you talk about data lineage, meaning tracing data through the data pipeline in your organization. In one project in Ireland, we used milk production as an analogy, like from the cow to the packaged milk through the refinery. In Austria, milk didn't work so well there. We used more a pub with ingredients and schnitzel and beer as a result. But what I'm trying to say is try to speak the language of your audience. Try to explain in simple terms what you're doing.
Okay, I see. I see also that we have a first question from our audience, from Dua. What are the hot topics about data governance?
So what are the trends and what are the hot topics currently in the data governance field? I think most of them we will actually not cover today, because this is kind of supposed to be an introductory session, and I guess we will have more upcoming sessions which will dive more into these kind of topics. But for example, of course, one hot topic there is automation in this area, or if you want to use the term AI, which maybe is a bit overused, but like AI-based data governance to automate at least partly building of data catalogs and data quality checks, how to use like clever approaches in that. That is one of the topics there. And of course also how this links to modern data architectures that we nowadays talk about. I mentioned data mesh and data spaces in data sharing across organizations earlier. I guess these are topics which are being discussed a lot at the moment. But I think diving into those would lead a bit too far and for this session today.
Super. I see that we have another question right now from Gauranga. I hope I pronounce it correctly. What is Federated Data Governance Program and when we can go for it? Please provide some insights.
Yeah. I think also there it's basically about and we will to some degree get to that maybe also in our like planned walk through the webinar, but let's touch it already now. Basically, how you set up your data governance, of course, there is no one size fits all solution. It very much depends on your needs, and there you may have some requirements in finance or regulatory reporting in banking, etc., which requires very strong kind of a governance. You have other areas which require less strong governance, like in marketing, etc. And that's the first aspect of it, where you don't necessarily have to have one solution which is like the same everywhere. You can have it like more distributed, to use that term, rather than federated. That's one side of it. The other side of it is if the organization is a federated organization, so you have a very, let's say, group of companies, how much you do on central level, on group level, and how much you do on the individual, let's say, subsidiary level. We actually had those kind of discussions quite a lot with banking groups, which are present in multiple countries. So how much is done on head office level, and how much basically freedom in terms of data governance you leave for the subsidiaries, and it's not black and white. So you can, depending on your corporate governance, which may be very centralized. I remember Citigroup, for example, had a very strong central governance, so they would define rules that would be rolled out into all the countries. In other banks, like if you look at whatever Raiffeisen International or Erste Group, they are less centralized and they have more freedom in the countries. Just to give some examples.
Okay, I'm not sure if we wanted to have this picture right now, so Torsten, it's up to you. But if not, then I would continue with my next question, which will anyway lead to this slide. So, what should be the first steps that we should take if we want to set up data governance, and what should be, let's say, the typical traps that we should avoid, not to, let's say, repeat the same mistakes that many of others already did before.
Maybe I will take it the other way around and start with some pitfalls that I see, or some traps.
Okay.
We touched some of them already. I mean, one of them is definitely to see data governance as an IT initiative that you can maybe even solve by buying a tool. Not saying that tools cannot be helpful, but basically, as we mentioned before, in the end, if you want to govern the data, you need to involve the people who can do something about the data, which is business people. They can improve the data quality. IT alone can try to somehow cleanse it, but that's just scrubbing. That's not solving the root cause. And also the data usage is in the business side, of course. So what the data is used for, maybe one piece always, or one topic always to keep in mind: data quality is never. There is no straightforward data quality. It always depends on what you're trying to do with the data, right? Stupid example, maybe to shortly mention. I talked to someone recently who was analyzing the pollution, the air quality in Hamburg, and he was using some sensor data for that, and it was measured twice per day, and he was measuring how good is the air quality in Hamburg, right? And it turns out that if a big, ship like Queen Mary is going through the harbor for 3 hours, the air is completely polluted, but that that sensor didn't catch it because it only measured in the morning and in the evening. So what I'm trying to say is you cannot say this is bad data quality in per se, because it depends on what you're trying to do with it. If you really try to measure pollution at any point of time, then of course it's useless. Just an example. So anyway, so involve business, keep business involved. Is not an IT topic. Get management buy-in, and because you will need the resources, at least you need to maybe change somebody's roles to some degree. And of course, people usually are reluctant to change. So it's a change management activity, as you mentioned, Peter, as well before. So take the time to explain it, get management involved, and get the management buy-in and support. And maybe the other recommendation that leads us to the how to start: don't start too big. Unless you are a bank that can invest into a whatever half-year project with thousands of man days just to basically set up a data governance because you're forced to do it by a regulator, you need to start small and do it step by step. And coming from that to what could be those steps, again, referring to the not one size fits all approach. First of all, figure out what you're doing with your data and what you're trying to do with your data and what kind of data you have, and based on that, define your data governance approach. What helps for that usually is to start with some kind of a data inventory, and again, that can be done in an Excel in the beginning or in some other form. Of course, there's tools support that, but it doesn't have to be. It can be starting on high level. What kind of data sets do I have? What kind of databases do I have? And that could, depending on the needs, evolve to a sophisticated data catalog on field level, but it doesn't have to. That's one side of it. And the other side of it, of course, is start to describe the data. And that is a business topic. And again, depending on your needs, this can start with either high-level categories of data. So I have whatever personal relevant or critical sensitive data. I have data that is used for marketing purposes. I have whatever kind of data, or based on business domains, but some high-level categories that could be the starting point up to or via a business glossary that describes terms and their relationships. That alone is usually a very helpful result of a data governance initiative, that different business departments agree on terms, and I guess every one of you has had the discussion of what is a customer. You can discuss this for quite a while, because of course marketing usually has a different view of who is a customer than controlling, who try to capture active customers mostly, right? And last but not least, of course, the other extreme, if you're really mature, you can start building a business data model in a very structured way, where those terms are not only described, but also connected, and of course mapped to the data and allow you to trace the data. But in any case, what I would start with is some kind of a data inventory. Granularity depends on your maturity and your needs, and some kind of description of the data in business terms.
Thank you, Thorsten. I'm afraid that our time is almost up. I'm not sure if we have time for one last question, or if we should keep it for next time. So waiting if they will show up or oh, okay, it does. So one last question from Kimber: would you agree that the taxonomy is a part of data governance, or is that part of a different process capability?
It actually
very short answer, please.
It fits very well to what I just described, because I called it business glossary, but of course, depending on how you structure it, you can call it a taxonomy as well, taxonomy of terms. It's something that is also helpful without data governance, but usually organizations don't do it if they don't do data governance. So is it part of data governance? Most definitions I've seen see it as part of data governance, but of course that doesn't mean you cannot do it also on its own, but it's very helpful for data governance at least. And it's definitely something that you need to do proper data governance.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And to the audience, if you need an additional resource for your initial steps in data governance, make sure to download our latest white paper, Data Governance Essentials, Importance, Approach, and Roles. It's a free download at accurity.ai/data-governance, or scan the QR code if you are here on with video on YouTube or LinkedIn channel. Thorsten, thank you very much for all the information you shared today with us. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you a good rest of the day.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Many thanks also to all who joined us live today and for being a part of our conversation. Please make sure that to follow Accurity AI on LinkedIn to get notified about upcoming episodes of Accurity Data Vibes. I'm looking forward to having you soon again. Bye-bye. Bye.